updates regarding this case and these recent attacks and this shadowy rogue agent activity. More like a rogue operation, really. So I'm going to be printing this phone stand. I'm using a tilted axis printer. So this is designed to be printed in place, but we might have to change this to print at a 45 degree. And that's the angle the printer is set at. Now let's see. I've already downloaded the files. We can head into this slicer. Let's see. This has already been made. This has already been sliced for the flat print. We're going to change this to slice this now at a 45 degree angle. And this is going to need supports now. So we have our supports turned off. Let's see. Generate support. Oh. So now let's see what it looks like when we actually slice this. Okay, so it looks like there's quite a bit support material. And this is printing at a 0.08, or not an 08, a 0.8 millimeter rather than a 0.4 nozzle head size. Let's see what our supports actually look like. Okay, they look very hollow. This should be a 5-hour print, all in place. I assume this file is made for a 0.4 millimeter nozzle, so we might not be able to print this in place. Of the nozzle itself might need to be changed. Let's export this and see. Angled. Alright. Alright. So now we can switch over. Okay. Let's first, actually, let's check out our, alright, let's check out what the original slice looked like. Right now this is running, it's running PLA, it's running black PLA. Black PLA, it might be PLA plus. This has had decent print quality, hasn't had the best support, and that might just be the settings that are just out of tune. This has just been printing for things to be good enough. Alright, so let's see. Yeah, this looks relatively, this looks pretty good in terms of the print. I'm somewhat concerned about it does look like there are some hanging bits being printed, particularly in this area, so I'm not sure. It appears that it starts on the ground, but it's printed at an angle, so we'll go for the angle print first to accommodate, to account for that. We might need to even accommodate that print for the angle of the printer by changing the minimum distances and the minimum sizing for generating some of these supports, but we'll go ahead and print and see. Alright, now the printer bed is heating up. Alright, now let's see. Alright, now this might be, let's see. Alright, while that's heating up, I'll start going through some of these notes that include some recent developments. Let's see. Let me go back to this browser. So, I encourage you to check out this channel from Kevin Shipp, former intelligence officer, who lays out a lot of very good information, very useful information in understanding the context of the nature of these sorts of things. I already had some background from some other career interests and legal deep dives regarding some industries and businesses that I was interested in and researching, as well as some other experiences. Now, as to the case that's mentioned in prior videos regarding harassment and attacks and intrusions, so there's been a persecution of anything related to my ethnicity and or skin color, with some requirements stated specifically for me to, the quoted statement is to sell out. These individuals have also threatened the lives of their own, of people of their own ethnic origins as well as skin colors, and I just have a list we'll go through. So they've applied for years now various incorrect political labels to myself and unofficial profiles, which have been used at, you could say, the highest level, and been passed around between agencies. And all of these labels have been correct. I myself have never self-described as having any particular political leaning, and I personally don't even really ever speak about politics for my personal interest, um, in terms of my own viewpoints as to what I would prefer or be interested in. So, yeah, at best, I, from time to time, when pestered about it or when required, provide some sort of more general, um, rational analysis with conclusions just drawn from general interest viewpoints. This has spiraled out into people in the same intelligence teams arguing that I am on contradicting sides of politics at the same time. So day by day, they will go back and forth. And people also arguing that I have some kind of allegiances, um, which is absolutely untrue. I've entered no valid agreements, and I particularly avoided some of these agencies, in particular, as well as certain other uh, machine entities, specifically for the purpose of avoiding attachment to any kind of hardline politics, any kind of de facto external possession or control of finances and things like that, just to remain outside of that box of having these kinds of obligations. Uh, Now, these individuals as well, um, I guess I'll scroll through some of these videos so you can take a look and see. The printer is, this printer is going now. So, let's see, where are we on? Okay, so part of surveillance includes processing and analyzing sub-vocalizations. So there's something called, let's see, let's look it up. Let's see. I think it's called diarization. It's called diarization. Okay, let's for a second, let's change this window capture and diarization. Now, diarization is where you are able to split voices out of a combined audio stream, similar to in a database where you may have a data lake, you may have unstructured data or aggregated data that has multiple structures and formats that's all stored and compiled into a single storage space. After you have that big pool of data, you need to split it out in order to process different types of data and data from different sources independently or in different pipelines. The same thing is true when it comes to audio processing. So you can process specific sounds, such as mechanical items that have certain acoustic signatures. You can process acoustic signatures for certain fluids and fluid motion and fluid dynamic events. You can process the same kinds of things for speech. So we used to have a website where you could buy some of these things as a civilian coming directly out of these, uh, coming out of university research. So a lot of this software eventually was licensed off to private entities, like private state entities, private institutions, or private corporations that went for these exclusivity contracts. But most of this research actually comes out of universities and starts off as public. So there used to be a website. One of these sites still exists, but there was a site that, and for all intensive legal purposes, you could purchase these kinds of equipment. Um, you could purchase the equipment and purchase these kinds of tools without having a particular law enforcement purpose, especially if your intent was scientific, research based, um, or anything academic. As long as you weren't actively purchasing them with plans to deploy in a field operation, outside of, you know, your own legal allotment or lawful use, right? That's a particular wording. So diarization. So these tools are used to interfere with conversations or to analyze conversations, with the purpose of future interference, um, control, the ability to steer things one way or another. On top of diarization, we have something else called subvocalization. Analysis. Now, most of these tools, once you build something like this, the easiest thing to do is to go and get a contract from the state. So most of these things end up outside of consumer availability. Even if the early research or even the code and software is initially publicly accessible. Usually when you go for a contract, what happens is there are multiple phases, right? So the moment that you get approved, all of your work done under an approved contract automatically becomes private, and then sharing information automatically has to go through a separate bureaucratic process of certain information being approved. Now, when companies are looking promising and you are attempting to go to market, what usually happens is they will either delay your research from being published by a certain amount of time, or maybe even an entire phase, or they will have somebody liaison with you to be able to constantly push updates. Because when it's looking promising and you really have something, they will have these different research projects and these different corporations that form out of these niche software and technology and scientific tools. They will make sure that they can market the stock price so that people in the know that are either working on the project, people that are providing political or some sort of lawmaking oversight or committee approvals, these kinds of people are able to benefit. So that's the personal drive for it, but it also does ensure that the public has access to this knowledge, at least to some extent, so that, and this is one of the ways that people play the stock market. This is how you can purchase stocks and buy into equity, and this is also how private equity and accredited investors do some of their research, where you can get these insights before things have gone to market. Now, I avoided getting one of these tools at a point in time with any kind of permanence on a device that I would keep, so I no longer have access to some of the things that I have at one point. So I am looking for more open source solutions. So some of the things that are done to manipulate people and manufacture fragmented evidence is to mess with you while you're falling asleep, waking up, and while you're in your sleep, particularly in your REM sleep, to steer you to repeat things that are said in your ears, not in your own speech necessarily, even though that can occur if you just keep on repeating words to somebody. Eventually they might speak it themselves. That's not really that hard of a concept to grasp, but particularly to capture subvocalizations. So I think about a quarter or a third of people are estimated to have what's considered an inner dialogue, meaning their thoughts are vocalized into speech. So while they are thinking, they are speaking under their breath, essentially. This is one of the primary ways that people are able to pick and choose what they deem to be a target and say that it's evidence based when in reality it's based on the intelligence officers choosing to basically siege your head and in turn your mouth with their own words. Um, this is commonly done in prisons as well. Um, it's a very common tactic, and even in corrupt policing and all sorts of authorities, this is such a common tool. I've seen it done live with people doing it in college dorm rooms for other purposes. Um, Not just to generate a statement of something potentially or exculpatory sounding or concerning or you know any kind of evidence, but you can also use this to seed ideas, to seed emotional sentiments. You can use these kinds of tactics to attempt to depress people. I particularly not very susceptible to much of anything, but well, everyone is susceptible to being irritated. Um, but in terms of the more emotional control, this is something that I particularly was. There are ways that you can inoculate yourself to a certain degree of a lot of this influence by basically poisoning it um, with tactics that are actually very similar to how you can poison AI, such as with AI art poisoning or AI music poisoning. So, yeah, some of the research on sort of influence and control psychology from back during the Vietnam times and from the hippie era with the kinds of things going on then, a lot of it was cut off. So even though a lot of these programs continued, the actual research itself, a lot of it fell off very severely and was picked up by um, entities that were not the originating entities that started these things, and not the originating people, even just by interest and collective, that were responsible for some of these things. So there have been much more advanced tactics on both ends of this in terms of the use of it in attacks as well as in defense. Now, and even from some of my conversations with these individuals and the particular intelligence team that more or less was the main team for a while and is still present, going all the way back to 2020 with people that I knew from being in person, from being my classmates in school and whatnot, before they got into their full-time jobs during their internships with the entity they work for. Uh, I had already more or less had a lot of this experience and attempted to convene about some of this information, which is more or less rejected. They had believed that um, basically at the bottom level of the entry level analyst officer jobs that they were trained to be more adept. So a lot of intelligence officer training, half of the training is gamification, and it's psychological. It's programming the officers to believe that their determination can overcome anything. It's programming them to believe that they can do anything they set their minds to. And it's more or less this kind of stereotype of a police academy, but it's worse than in just a police academy, because police academy does not last that long. With these internships and this intelligence training, a lot of these people, especially ones that are not technical specialists, they're not the hackers, they're not foreign language experts, people that are just the run of the mill agent. A lot of these individuals, especially in this kind of participation trophy, super gamified Instagram, TikTok brain generation, they don't really have much experience in general in life. Even people who've traveled, they don't typically know very much. They don't tend to be the most academic minded people. And so a lot of them, from my experience, basically come out of their internships believing if they've spent a certain amount of time in internships and they haven't been told anything that would give them any doubts or anxieties during their training in these lectures and in these one-on-one and team-based interactions they have throughout their internships, that they have been privy to more or less all of the, more or less relevant advancements in both attacking and defense with the methods and tools that they use. And it should be concerning, because why would the average run-of-the-mill grunt, and if you talk to these recruiters, they'll tell you that they hire anybody. You just don't do drugs for a year. You do your schoolwork, maintain a good enough GPA, and maybe study Windows or study some technical tool for you to use on the job. That's basically all you need to get into one of these places. The standards will rise and start going back up again, but this is the lowest they've ever been, and it'll probably not start going back up for another 10 years or so. But yeah, so you should question, that should be concerning. Why is the average run-of-the-mill person, where they effectively hire fools and like hiring ignorant people who are also unwise, why would these people all come out of school, and this has happened on at least 2 teams full of people, as well as certain individuals, why would you expect that these people have all the information about the things that they use? Because they tend to more or less stay away from giving people a sense of having the proper intellectual anxiety that may debase some of the personalities they like to hire, that are more anxiety prone and not rational enough to reason beyond their personal low confidence or incompetence. Where in the particular team that's been associated with myself, they tend to defer their judgment to other individuals by just calling other people up rather than even doing a simple Google search or looking through a manual or an encyclopedia or an academic source, even though they have access, just to answer basic questions. To the point where at points in time their managers and bosses almost act like they're butlers or personal concierge. Now, let's see. So part of this, in being able to analyze these words, doing this subvocal analysis or subvocalization analysis, and being able to split out the audio streams and just pick your voice out. Now those kinds of things to track your voice and do the noise suppression, now that AI is, present on consumer devices with GPUs and such. And I have been recording a bunch I have a database built up full of audio files that can be processed for the subvocalization analysis. So I'm working on looking to see if I can process those myself or making them available. Let's see. So part of what this has been used for is to it's for censorship. So it's banning certain words, such as the names of authoritarian icons. So banning authoritarian references, such as with eugenicists. These are things that are usually only done when someone is regarded as too evil to comfortably think about, in terms of just generally avoiding speaking the names of evil for a normal average person. So it is a strange thing for somebody who is deeply invested in torture and violence by their very professions, who have chosen to give years of their lives to a job just for the sake of causing damage, to be too uncomfortable. It's almost as if they treat these authoritarian regimes and almost like the Muhammad, almost like in Islamic religion, where they worship these humans as if they're gods, except in any religion, God is not a banned word. So that's one of the strange things. Even most cults don't actually, most cults promote their leaders. So this is one of the most strange things that I've ever witnessed. Now, they've also threatened religious sects, such as they have persecuted Judaism while supporting fraudulent forms of Christianity. So Christianity, in terms of sects and religious groups that very much contradict the very basic, widely known things about the Bible or the Torah, whatever Abrahamic or Hebrew text. And in the U.S., federally, this is labeled as a Christian nation. There was a court case, I believe it went to the Supreme Court, but this, on paper, by case precedent, is labeled as a Christian nation. But the one thing is, Christianity and Judaism are not separate religions. They were never intended to be. And in reality, there's no viable way to separate the two. The idea that Christians can fight Jews doesn't remotely make any kind of sense. Because effectively, to be a Christian, you have to follow the Jews. Or rather, the Jew. Now, there are also, so some of these things have also come with green lighting. This particular leader of this team was mentioned in the case based on her genetics. So another team has come in, taken over when she called them in to supplement her, now override her, which have claimed that her genetics is the reason that they have continued her attacks, and also the reason why she was initially installed in power to be present in the capacity to make these attacks in the first place. You could say the woman is Greenlandic. Her last name is the same last name of a Nobel laureate. The laureate was, I believe, from Denmark. Technically, Greenland is Denmark. But this particular woman, her mother is from Greenland. I presume her father is as well. I'm fairly certain that her father is also Greenlandic. Ironically, with the previous videos made on the attacks against my ability to work and help with cancer treatment distribution, so this woman herself actually had or has some form of brain cancer, which is the most ironic thing in this. Even more ironic is when they first started their attacks and intrusion, I was still kind of around being in contact with another woman that I had known from another one of my intelligence contacts. involved in, I guess, our with our associates in this kind of not so much of a friend group, but a group of acquaintances um, who also pretty much spent the last times that I conversated with her talking about the particularly evil population that apparently is very prevalent among the patients, or especially with people that aren't dying or that are going to remission, end up with some of the most vile personalities, especially among the youth. And this woman is only about a year older, in her own words, than myself. Well, let's see. So there's also okay, the fact that I even know that this woman is Greenlandic is one of the kind of smoking guns of proof here, where the only way that I knew that she was Greenlandic is because her now ex-boyfriend, but boyfriend at the time, who was an underling under her on her same team, um, shouted her ethnic origins and kept on shouting information about her into my eardrums. Now, I had her phone contact at a point of time. I also had a phone contact with somebody involved in one of these mind control programs. Let's see. I think this is a coincidence. But they were in the same platform, actually, the same digital communications platform. But I did not remember this one much at all. We only had one, or we had a couple encounters. Really, only one that I was that was significant. The other one was more or less her recognizing me around her friends. But yeah, he by informing me of her parents, or the woman herself being Greenlandic and her parents not being from the country, that was enough for me to look up. So, in some of these countries, especially Nordic countries, some of these Dutch-derived countries, there are lists of acceptable names. So, in order to name your baby when a woman gives birth, you have to pick from a pre-approved list of names, unless you seek individual approval for a specific name you've chosen. Now, the common names that people have are very, very. There aren't too many names. You might have 10,000 common names. It's a small enough list that if you spent a week searching, you would eventually likely find the name. Um, I was fairly confident about just recognizing a letter, or either. I suspected the name either started with a K or a P. So all I did was sit there and search through the most common names. I didn't even search through a government approval list. But even countries without an approval list that require that tend to have the same kinds of trends in terms of the actual data analysis, or the data trends regarding the names. So that may have taken me about 8 hours or something like that. Um, I think I was more sure that it started with a K. When I went to searching for the P names, I was eventually able to find it. And it is a very distinctive name. So, and at the time, there was a Secret Service individual that I was indirectly connected to, that they had voiced a particular concern being contacted at the time. Um, and I think that was in 2021. Now, let's change this view back so you can see the print. We're almost just about. Oh, I guess the print's already up here. Okay, so just some of the things which have been referenced. Sub-vocalization analysis tools. So that was how that was confirmed, more or less. And then, of course, I could go through the school as well with certain legal requests. There are Freedom of Information Acts. There are other things that could be filed. Um, but I know this for sure because this was actually included. And so, even at the time that I'd met this woman and had her contacts in my phone, I'd had my phone cloned and had all sorts of things extracted from pretty much all of my devices and stored and exported kind of all over the place. And there's some other metadata that's included surrounding those circumstances that also create those connections and ties. Now, let's see. So, in terms of, so the team that's taken over has particularly sought political support and approvals. Approval is the term that they've used for the purposes of abduction, for the purposes of enslavement. Now, I find that interesting as well because if there was a perceived danger or concern, which has been voiced, possibly fraudulently, they've claimed they've been bluffing and lied about things. Obviously, that's their job. That's one of the first things anyone would pick up in any kind of intelligence work. But the main thing about it to me is that, let's see. The main thing about it to me is that it is a strange thing that somebody would be going to such lengths to avoid simply closing up what, might be argued officially to be some sort of loose end. That doesn't quite make any kind of sense, and it should make you question what the people in these authorities are actually doing, because they don't seem to, at least around myself, have much of any care given for anything of any actual security. Now, let's go to the next note. The next point is, yes, so these groups have openly stated and admitted multiple times that even after abducting me, that they plan to kill me anyway. Yes. Yes, so the idea that they were planning to kill me anyway kind of, at least provides some context as to any choice to have any further engagement or non-compliance. Um, yes, and they've also admitted to, not admitted, they've bragged about using their positions within intelligence to commit violence against myself and other particularly, you could say, non-Caucasian people for the purposes of political censorship. The original group has done this as well as the new team that's taken over alongside them. So, in short, you could call that political violence, violence with a political motive. And now you can also, and these other individuals are not people, they're not constituents of mine. These are not individuals who I regularly confer with or have any political involvement with. some of these individuals I did not even know. That's the most interesting thing. Some of these individuals I've either had little to I've either had little or entirely no contact whatsoever with. Um, now, okay, let's see. So some of the things they've done is also beyond just sub vocalizations. Also claim to be planning to use authorities to, in their own words, give me a whooping or give me a beating, um, to attempt to force some kind of sham confession and, cause some sort of kangaroo court trial or case. Now, one of the things that this is all tangled up with is there has been a pursuit stated to steal an AI and crypto business, which I own, based in the United States on U.S. soil. So all of this is local. None of this is foreign. None of these things particularly involve any foreign persons. Um, in the things I'm speaking about right now, these are all things completely based on soil. And even in this particular town that I'm in, yeah, there's a long history here of particularly students, and I'm a student myself, in these universities, um, basically being harassed and having these sorts of campaigns of attacks run against them. Um, so this pursuit to steal this business started out as an attempt to purchase the business. So one of these intelligence officers stated that they had an interest in purchasing the business. They stated that $425,000 was their price. Now, given what this technology is worth, um, this provides some hybrid mix of on-chain and off-chain crypto infrastructure, and also provides ways to do market sentiment analysis, which is now the leading in one of the most profitable areas for algo trading and high frequency and automated trading, um, within the blockchain, and also now within certain categories of stocks. Um, and this was also set up to be some kind of, you know, a data platform. It was really set up to have data be on the side, possibly in its own entity, and some of these things just legally had to be separated out. Um, but these intelligence teams who claim to know this industry and have all this expertise, for some reason were unaware of some of the legal requirements of this, and were basically on track to set themselves up for some massive legal nightmares and headaches, and to pretty much be at the mercy of people just choosing to go after their assets if they were to have acquired the business. But then they accused me and accused our business or our business management of doing bad business and trying to keep portions of the business out of the sale, either for some future level of control. They claimed we were trying to control them, ironically, while they're doing all this excess, intrusion and manipulation of all these devices and whatnot, which is absolutely not true. We wanted no further involvement at all with them. We were trying to sever ties with them as well as with any connection to them, financially. Now they also claim that some of this reaching for ears up and higher up in politics was particularly based out of the personal entertainment interest of one single individual on the team. It's another woman, and a lot of these teams that behave in this manner, which has been described internally as disgraceful and shameful, embarrassing, from what I've heard, supposedly 10% of the premier publicly known, the big alphabet soup entities are vile, evil, cruel people. Um, just even outside of their jobs, just as their general nature. Um, that's the number that I'd been given back in circa 2018, 2019. So, yes. So, one of the things about this is that one of these, well, actually, the same woman, so on the secondary team, which is taken over, the same woman, as well as her other female counterpart, particularly claim to be non conservative politically, to be extremist driven or associated, to be extreme themselves, and to intentionally be manufacturing evidence for the purpose of gaining political involvement to feed their manufactured evidence off to for the sake of their personal interest, statedly involving their own clout and ego, which I did find off-putting because obviously people that tend to get these political positions within these organizations at the heads of them tend to be involved in politics because there are at least worse workplace politics involved. A lot of these positions are appointed, but it's strange that having an ego is not viewed as an inherent flaw in somebody that should be able to more or less turn it off, in terms of turning off their personal biases and personality issues or limitations. And even when you have a team where people get this whole groupthink, strength in numbers level of confidence, that instead of it demolishing egos or the concept of self-esteem to remove those as vulnerabilities or weaknesses or fragility, they actually just boost them. They encourage and solidify these things as foundational drivers of their own behavior, more so than the actual intelligence itself is. Now, so part of what's been done here is the new team here stated that, in their own words, we need him here, referring to myself, in terms of trying to keep me within the country, to turn the country into a prison, even though these people have been, involved with these types that are all claiming to want to export and exile people and send people away. But their stated interest is actually to acquire people and keep people around, or at least myself. Um, apparently, some of these reports, which they refuse to properly service or assess, were also, they reached the New York Times editors, who are known very widely to be largely under intelligence control and influence. This is one of the ways that they get these scoops, these big news stories, is by playing nice to censor things, so that way they will get fed these news stories. And there's a whole arm and a section of some of these agencies that deal with that sort of thing in terms of media management in these more public facing or public oriented roles. Now, let's see. Now, there have been claims also to be, for there to be approvals to set me up and legally frame myself. Um, so they've claimed to have these approved attacks, and they've restated this for some time. First, they were doing it really the entire time, And at one point, they claimed that they were just bluffing and that something had changed, and now their approvals and their interest and potential involved danger, or rather, extra danger, had become real to them, even though it doesn't make any sense to believe that anything would not be real to someone you were already physically attacking and harming and already making active attempts to frame, which had previously failed. Now, recently, just this morning, there was a claim that they stated, "We need a really good locksmith." So, to me, this implies that they are planning on attacking and intruding on people who are not officially approved for intrusive surveillance with remote means of subduction. Um, so that might remote means of subduction, in the sense that you can subdue people remotely um, without having to have physical contact with them. Obviously, one of the more crude ways of doing this is, systems like the sound lasers that people have seen being used for crowd control and um, stemming up protests and things like that. Uh, to me, this seems more like they want a really good locksmith to be quick, but more so probably to not need to use something like a bump key, which would leave traces, to or require a lock to be replaced, to not make noise, to break into places they currently don't have full coverage of. So that might be hasty movements. And they've claimed to have people in Houston and Chicago ready to act to harm and set up individuals. The notes this report is made of has been used as, in their own words, an inspiration. They claimed it was overwriting. So attempts to circumvent anti-corruption uh, clauses and team security requirements have been made for the business that they have stated to be interested in stealing, which are all stipulated in business contracts. And one of their stated end goals with this is sexually violent access to black males, which you can kind of see where that is going, and probably where that's coming from as well. So they've already broken into one house in particular before, after making these claims, where they were harassed, or where they harassed an elderly woman and repeatedly had someone suspected to be operating from a neighbor's apartment based on the woman's own claims of hearing these noises and noticing her neighbor's activity in the building. So they had a person take out this elderly woman's security camera, which I had installed, which was watching the building, and supposedly they have been operating off the books and outside of their officially reported activity within their agency. So, and they've also invited myself into what the leader of the new team that has been invited in has described as the biggest gang and the richest gang in America. And the idea that this is all for some sort of national security purpose or anything else is absolutely false, because there's no intelligence value that has been gained here. They have never come close to gaining any kind of informational hegemony, informational superiority, which they are trained to get. And they actually rejected intelligence which was offered for years on end, even with the new team that was brought in, until recently, when they've tried to make their own assessments, maybe just within the past year. And they've destroyed existing intelligence, including a private and unpublished memoir, which was never going to be publicly released, accounting for verifiable threats to security and public safety. And they've also lost multiple devices without recovering any data at all from them, while focusing on threatening The owner of the device, myself, every offer to sell or transfer such data through proper channels above board was actually also rejected. I might even be able to pull one of those things up here. There's an affidavit which was signed and notarized regarding a particular device that had quite a bit of information that was purely used as a business device, but which also had a certain amount of evidence on it because it was used for business administration, so it had reports and things involving threats to the business and security attacks, both cybersecurity, physical security. And this device was proposed to be sent over. Now, let me see if I can pull this up. I'll pull it up if it looks like I can show enough of it without having to, if I can show enough of it without having to expose too much private confidential information. But this was signed off within, well, I'll say it was signed, notarized, it was sent off to a lawyer who were actually planning to use business, and that lawyer, we believe, had some subsequent contact following this, and it was a crypto lawyer actually, not even within the country, which may have been a particularly bad thing in terms of this, because of this woman's nefarious activity and interest in working against us and never compromising, complying, never cooperating, never having any actual alignment. And part of that is suspected to be because the woman and her boyfriend viewed it as a status symbol, and the males in the group particularly went against anything that they perceived to please the woman in the group. And even with one of them, like the supervisor, in his own words, a gay male, still fighting for the female attention. It's a very strange thing. Okay. Let, let's see. What is recent? Okay, so we can pull up part of this. Well, I'll pull up certain parts of this affidavit, and we'll leave the rest. So, let's see. Window capture. So, this is. You can see this. So, this is a short excerpt. A lot of this contains some information that's not necessarily the certain things to just leave off, but this was basically to transfer a device, and that was rejected. So, yeah, those are most of the notes that I was trying to make. Now, I would encourage looking at, to really get a full context, you really should be taking a look at this YouTube channel up on the screen here. Yes, this YouTube channel is probably the most informative thing in terms of gaining a sense of just how corrupt, against policy, against law, and really against the general public a lot of this is, even by their own very wide allotments for all kinds of criminal behavior and adversive, adversarial activity.